All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
I will not be rushed, Kim. I will not be rushed. And you can't rush me.
We know.
You can't rush perfection, Kim. That's the reality. Am I right, Albert? I mean, the great scientific breakthroughs through time. I mean, when they were mapping DNA, the guys who were mapping DNA, you know, Crick and the other guy. Who was the other guy with Crick who was mapping the DNA, Albert? Do you know? Kim, do you know?
You don't remember him because
people?
that was the guy that was on time, so no one knows who that was.
No, that was Watson was his name. Watson and Crick, and they mapped the DNA, and no one was going, hey, hurry up, you got to start, we got to make the announcement. They go, hey guys, I'm mapping the double helix of the DNA right now. Can you just get off my back?
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Why are you yelling?
I'm just saying perfection can't be rushed, is all I'm saying. We have a nearly perfect show today. And
I blame you.
I'm perfect. The nearly part will be brought by Albert and Kim. I am excited about the chat. It's already inhabited with some of our favorite viewers and listeners. Good morning to everybody. Let's get it on. Got a very prominent, brilliant public intellectual and lawyer. It's kind of a big legal day on the show.
Yeah.
June Carbone. What you're seeing in the lower right-hand portion of the screen, we're offering as sort of we're beta testing something new. And that is, you can see, this is, again, if you're on YouTube, we're a live show every day. And of course, you can listen to it on Spotify. You can listen to it on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, etc., iHeartRadio. The visual portion of the show, though, is on YouTube, and we're live every day, 11 to 1 on the West Coast, 2 to 4 on the East Coast, and around the world whenever you want to take it in. And if you're watching on YouTube, and even in delay, you'll see our regulars and anybody who's chiming in right now in the chat. And at the beginning of the show, and this is the beta testing part, we decided to actually just live post whatever is in the chat at the beginning of the show as we get started. And once we get into the show, we'll kind of lose the live chat and we'll just post strategically those things that we think are comments that might enhance the conversation or whatever it might be. So there are other times during the show, like if we're asking a question or something, or we're looking to solicit a comment, where we might also post the comments at the end of the show. Might be one place, also during the show, as I say, in some of those strategic spots. But now, anyway, to over-explain it as I have, the beginning of the show, we have the comments posted. So you're seeing them probably more clearly than am I. And it's just to explain, that's what that thing is that you're seeing as you look at the screen in the lower right-hand portion. I'm on my phone. The chat is teeny tiny, says Tammy. Yes, it's not really built to be seen, I think, on mobile too clearly, because everything is just reduced in size on mobile. Drinking my Coachella Valley coffee at the moment. It is so with extra O's good, says Michael Klein. He is so right. Man, Coachella Valley coffee and tea, but of course the website is CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, and I don't mind telling you that I have some right here. It is so delicious, I must tell you. I am drinking from one of our, this is the newest iteration of our mug, and of course on the back side of the mug, different quotes from drops on the show. We could try ignoring it, sir.
We could try ignoring it, sir.
Yeah, that's the one on this mug. Anyway, if you want to participate in the magic that is Coachella Valley Coffee, Tea, Spices, it's a boutique roastery, and you will love it. Best coffee I've ever tasted. And you can imagine, I don't need to tell you, I've drunk coffee all around the world, Kim. I've drunk
Yeah.
coffee in some
Very
of the most
sophisticated coffee drinker.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Do you know who I am?
Yes, exactly.
I'm kind of a big deal.
I am someone who's in Vietnam. I've had coffee, and all across the European Union, I've had coffee. In Britain, I've had coffee.
In the world of coffee drinkers, you would be on the upper echelon.
I've had coffee south of the border. I've had coffee across Latin America. I've had coffee in Africa. I've had coffee in the Riyads of Morocco. And I will tell you that this is the finest coffee I have ever tasted.
Yeah.
So grab yourself a bunch, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, and use our discount code MARKT at checkout. And you too can enjoy the refined experience of drinking Coachella Valley coffee and tea. Yes, shadow producer Calvin Wong puts it best. I am a connoisseur of coffee. Of course, his comment would be even better were it spelled correctly, the word connoisseur, but it's not. But I got the essence of what he was saying. Man from the West 420, have you had cannabis coffee, Mark?
I didn't know that was a thing.
I didn't know either.
Where are my weed smokers?
A little
I don't know about
caffeine
that.
with your cannabis?
I've never had it, but look, here's to it. I have a cannabis story, but I don't want to slow the show down anymore, so I'm not going to tell it right now. If there's time later, I'll tell it. It just happened last night. It doesn't involve getting high or anything. But I think you'll kind of appreciate the coincidence. And if I don't get to it today, I'll get to it tomorrow. Speaking of tomorrow, I'll just mention it again. We have the doctor coming in tomorrow, Dr. Michael Daigneault. He is a brilliant ER doctor who can comment on so many things that are going on, so many changes at the CDC and NIH. The new vax advisories have come out. They've modified a bunch of different things. They've modified some, I'm trying to think of how to describe this without getting demonetized or played down. We'll talk about it more tomorrow. I'll just say that there are a lot of
the age restrictions and the recommendations for who and who should not get certain vaccines.
Thank you. There's a lot very controversial, and the doctor will be here tomorrow. So anyway, all right, that's a little bit of what's happening. Thanks to everybody for being here, for supporting the show. And as I say, June Carbone, bottom of the hour, the professor from Minnesota. She knows all these areas of the law, particularly when it comes to families and how families will be affected legally. In the Trump administration, there are a lot of things changing. I want to talk to her about that. Also, she's very familiar with the corporate structure and corporate world in which women have tried to excel through a glass ceiling. As you know, that's been insanely low. I mean, there is a patriarchy that has dominated everything. I'd suggest everything from the very earliest time. The patriarchy that has informed religion, the creation of religions, all favored men, right? I mean, you can go to the religion. There are hundreds of them, hundreds of gods, etc. But one consistent feature is that women are in the back of the car. Men are driving the car, the high priests, etc. I make this point simply to say that political structure, religious structure, all of these things, and political/religious is kind of an adjunct. These are all things that women have had to swim upstream against, I'd say. And June speaks to, as a professor, and as a writer, the legal structure and governmental structure that women, and honestly, the practical structure in the C-suites, that is to say, the executive suites, that women have had to penetrate, that they've had to somehow pierce to even get a seat at the table. So I'm really looking forward to talking to her about what's happening now in the new America, because it is the new America and things are changing quite radically. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
Speaking of the new America, Jim Slayton said, I had my Coachella Valley coffee this morning, straight up, right in, no problem. Love it. That is a callback for those who are new. We had a caller on the old radio show who was talking about, what was he talking about? He was talking about
straight up, right in, no problem.
It was
It was a colonoscopy, actually.
Colonoscopy, that's
Yeah,
right. And he was saying that he didn't even get the anesthesia on it. Isn't that what he's saying, Albert?
Oh God.
Yeah, no painkillers or anything. He just straight up right in.
Right,
you know.
no problem.
Straight up right in, no problem.
That's Dave and Chico. I remember that. That was on a
Dave
radio
and
show.
Chico would just call in and talk to me too. Dave didn't need to be on air. He just needed that one had to be on air though.
He was a musician or had a musical background, I think. He's kind of an interesting personal history. I was kind of hoping that he'd follow us over here, but he's I don't know where he is. He's probably in Chico.
Straight up right in, no problem.
Anyway, that's what that's a call
Enjoying
back to our old radio show.
excellent gastric health.
Yes.
You have a backlash against that showing of the chat in the little bottom corner. People are not liking it.
Oh,
They
wow.
say it's too little, it's too small to read, whether it's on their phones or their PCs.
Oh.
And Beth says, I don't understand why we need an additional screen space for the live chat. Both of my devices use half the screen for the chat already, Mark.
Oh, wow. With an exclamation point. You know,
Yeah.
that's that good day, sir, kind of.
Good day,
All right,
sir.
exactly. Well,
You just don't get it, do
I
you?
guess I
don't.
don't. I thought it would be something that people would like.
No, they don't.
All
like
right,
it.
well, so that's one vote against it, and we will see.
There were several votes against it, but yeah.
Oh, there were. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll lose it. I don't know. Again, it was just something that we thought we'd offer to the audience to, share their thoughts on an ongoing basis. But if it's, not something they want, then it's fine with me. All right. I love the anesthesia that I was given for my colonoscopy, says William Lundgren. This is how stuff happens. It's like pinball, He says straight up right in, no problem. Jim Slayton. We play straight up right in. I talk about the fact that guy came onto the show and talked about his colonoscopy, and that's where that straight up right in comes. And then William talks about how much he loved the anesthesia for the colonoscopy. I vote against too, says Penny. No, thank you, says Dillette. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is Colonoscopy Talk. Welcome. I'm your host, Mark Thompson. Good stuff. All right, can we...
The Mark Thompson Show.
In the new America, we have a new Lord and Savior, and you will have to learn to bow to him. He is Donald Trump. He surrounded himself with mostly people who he's seen on TV or billionaires who have been involved in suing the government or in disputes with the very government agencies that they are now running. One of his favorite billionaires, because the billionaire that really donated the most to his campaign was a guy named Elon Musk, ran and still runs Tesla. He also runs SpaceX. Not the founder of Tesla. Most of you know this. He came on as CEO, but Musk, to his credit, he popularized Tesla and got electric cars into the mainstream. I think you have to give the devil his due on that. I try to be fair even to people who I think are loathsome figures, and I think Musk is a loathsome figure. What he's done with government, his Doge program, in which he has scraped government databases from the Treasury Department to Social Security, he has, I would say, stolen information and data from Americans. Now that data and a lot of the personal information that Americans have on government websites and stored in these government institutions is going to be turned over to Palantir. We talked about that yesterday. But so that's a different issue. That's happening officially in a way that I think should also be illegal. But let's leave that aside for now. Musk took a wrecking ball to government. I don't need to tell you how he's dismantled it, created its own chaos, has hobbled everything from the national park system to the EPA and basic clean water restrictions and clean air restrictions. But Musk is gone now. And now Musk is biting back at Donald Trump and that ridiculously bloated bill that is all designed to get the richest Americans a tax break. So there is now a back and forth, and it would appear that the love has drained out of the relationship. I thought Trump was somewhat guarded in some of his comments. Musk, not guarded about what he's saying regarding this bill. He talks about the fact that it is a deficit horror show, and he's right about that, of course. The deficit will grow immensely because of this bill. And I'll just remind you that Donald Trump's presidency in season 1, back when he won the presidency and beat Hillary Clinton, he blew the deficit out there also. Trump is not a fiscally responsible executive to begin with, and he's clearly not going to be as president here in season 2 of Donald Trump. This is Trump speaking in the Oval today about Musk's criticism of the bill that he wants to get through Congress.
The criticism that I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen, regarding Elon Musk and your big, beautiful bill, what's your reaction to that? Do you think it in any way hurts passage in the Senate, which, of course, what is you're seeking?
Well, look, I've always liked Elon, and I was very surprised. You saw the words he had for me, and he hasn't said anything about me that's bad. I'd rather have him criticize me than the bill, because the bill is incredible. It's the biggest cut in the history of our country. We've never cut. It's about 1.6 trillion in cuts. It's the biggest tax cut. You would say, people's taxes will go way down, but it's the biggest tax cut in history. It's we are doing things in that bill that are unbelievable. And when you look at what we're doing for small businesses, for people, for middle-income people, all of the things that we're doing, nobody's ever seen anything like it. And, Elon's upset because we took the EV mandate, and, which was a lot of money for electric vehicles. And, they're having a hard time, the electric vehicles. And they want us to pay billions of dollars in subsidy. And, Elon knew this from the beginning. He knew it for a long time ago. That's been in there. I would say, JD, that hasn't changed. That's been right from the beginning. Mr. Secretary, that hasn't changed at all, right from the beginning. But I know that it disturbed him. He wanted, and rightfully, he recommended somebody from that he, I guess, knew very well. I'm sure he respected him, but to run NASA. And I didn't think it was appropriate. And he happened to be a Democrat, like totally Democrat. And I say, look, we won. We get certain privileges. And one of the privileges, we don't have to appoint a Democrat. NASA is very important. We have great people. General Kane is going to be picking somebody with our, we'll be checking him out and seeing, but he wanted that person, a certain person, and we said no. And, I can understand why he's upset. Remember, he was here for a long time. You saw a man who was very happy when he stood behind the Oval desk. And even with the black eye, I said, do you want a little makeup? We'll get you a little makeup. But he said, no, I don't think so, which is interesting and very nice. He wants to be who he is, so you could make that statement too, I guess. Look, Elon and I had a great relationship. I don't know if we're well anymore. I was surprised because you were here. Everybody in this room practically was here as we had a wonderful send-off. He said wonderful things about me. You couldn't have nicer. Said the best things. He's worn the hat. Trump was right about everything. And I am right about the great, big, beautiful bill. We call it a great, big, beautiful bill because that's what it is. He knew every aspect of this bill. He knew it better than almost anybody. And he never had a problem until right after he left. And if you saw the statements he made about me, which I'm sure you can get very easily, it's very fresh on tape. He said the most beautiful things about me. And he hasn't said bad about me personally, but I'm sure that'll be next. But I'm very disappointed in Elon. I've helped Elon a lot.
Yeah, you can see that for Trump, it's always first, what have you said about me personally?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he really does focus on that. And so it's a big deal that Musk hasn't attacked him personally, but he has eviscerated the bill itself. In fact, in various posts on X, it's wild how there is a history that Musk has actually posted. He resurfaced old social media posts in which Trump said that he was embarrassed by Republican efforts to extend the debt limit. I cannot believe the Republicans are extending the debt ceiling. I'm Republican and I'm embarrassed, Trump said in 2013. Wise words, Musk said after reposting it. Musk also replied to a Trump post from 2012 in which he said members of Congress should not be eligible for re-election if the U.S. doesn't have a balanced budget. I couldn't agree more, Musk wrote. Again, it was Trump who said that members of Congress should not be eligible for re-election if the U.S. doesn't have a balanced budget. So now Trump in the Oval is claiming Musk had known the inner workings of this bill better than almost anybody. I mean, these all, he always speaks in hyperbole, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, better than almost anybody, he knew it. And he had no problems with it, Trump said. So Look,
And
this is
Musk responds today. He says, wait a minute, no, false. This bill was never shown to me even once. It was passed in the dead of night so fast that almost no one in Congress could even read it. And he says, yeah, no, I wonder if this is a kind of a lover's quarrel or if this is a public breakup. What are we witnessing here?
I mean, I don't know what those labels mean. You know,
Is it just a spat or is this the end?
I see. Yeah. There are two schools of thought on this, and here they are. One is Donald Trump has, of course, shown nothing but an interest in transactional relationships all his life. So it's what have you done for me lately? And Musk lately has been an impediment, right? Now he's put a stink around this bill. He's a very high profile guy. He's controlling a social media company, and he's gotten it out there that he thinks this bill is horrifyingly awful. So it makes it harder for this bill to pass. The relationship part of it is that Trump, on the transactional side, feels as though, you know, this guy was critical to me winning the office of the presidency, but now he's a pain in the ass. So kind of would like to shove him aside, at least for now. But he shoved people aside before. I mentioned yesterday Steve Bannon and Trump had a huge fight in season 1, and they brought back Steve Bannon in season 2, and now it's a bromance again. So I think these things can always just blow over again because Trump's interested in next week. What do I need from you now? He's interested in the transactional.
He's
the
also
second,
very loyal. He's also very, harping on the loyal. So if you speak out against him at all, you're on the outs, which is what Musk just did. On the other hand, Musk pretty much bought the presidency. So now Trump is beholden to him for whatever he wants, right? Because he paid all this money. As a matter of fact, Musk came out today and said, you would have not won if it wouldn't have been for me.
I mean, that's the real truth, yes. But I'd say he's not beholden. Just see the point I just made. The transaction is over. Trump is president. He has a lot of people in place to continue his vision. Much of his vision is self-enrichment, and much of his vision is taking care of, he perceives his constituency, I think, as this billionaire class that he just has to take care of. And the Christian right is being taken care of in a big way by Trump. I mean, from a political agenda standpoint, I think they're in first position. But I would, and of course, this immigration is a Trump thing in a big, big way, and we'll talk more about it. But the second thing I wanted to say was just that you can overplay the power that Musk has because of his money to primary a lot of these guys. I think some of them might be intimidated by that. Some of them might be. I'm talking when I see these guys, I mean, the men and women who occupy the Senate, because it's all about the Senate now, although this certainly applies to the House as well. But on some level, they're also aware of the political considerations associated with specifics in the bill. And so I think the idea somehow that Musk will be a threat to them, that might be overstated, I guess is what I'm saying. I don't really know, and I think no one really knows to what degree it may be an issue, but that's the other consideration. Obviously, that Musk, with all of that money, can help primary many of these legislators who back this bill or who run afoul of what Musk is saying is the way he wants to go. So, the co-presidency is over. You have Trump, incredibly strong, charismatic personality, even as though I know on the left and many feel as though he's on some level it's a joke, but he does speak and punch through this media ecosphere such that people always listen to what he's saying, as ridiculous as it might be. Musk, powerful and moneyed, also has a place at the political table. I just don't know how this all shakes out for the Senate. That's all we're talking about is the vote on this bill. So if you're a senator who cares very much about Trump calling you out personally, you may be cowed by that, cowed into a yes vote. But they're going to reconstitute this one way or the other. There are going to be some changes to this bill. And so we'll see how it all comes together. But for the moment, you're right, Kim. I mean, there's no love lost for the moment. It's Trump was careful, but I'd suggest he was also, he's over it. He's right. He's over Elon Musk. And so,
For now.
Yeah, for now. But again, he could rise in next week's episode. You know, for Trump, it's all a TV series. So.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Now, I did want to mention that there is investigation underway. They've really gone to town on this Biden thing. You know, Biden wasn't all there. Biden concealed the Biden aides concealed the decline of Biden. And now Donald Trump has launched an investigation into whether aides concealed the mental acuity issues and challenges that Biden was having. He's ordered an investigation into whether aides to former President Biden concealed alleged declines in mental acuity, including the use of an automatic pen to sign Biden's name on official documents. Trump saying he'll look into whether Biden's aides attempted to deceive the public by hiding serious cognitive decline from the American people. This conspiracy marks one of the most dangerous, concerning scandals in American history, he said in a memorandum from the White House. Presidents have long used an auto pen to sign documents, but Trump has repeatedly raised this issue as suggesting that, you know, Biden couldn't even sign his name. Biden didn't know where he was. There's no evidence that Biden aides used the auto pen to take actions without Biden's knowledge, or that Biden's purported decline led aides to take actions on his behalf, reports Politico. The Justice Department has long found that use of an auto pen is valid, so long as the president is the one making the decisions. In response to the Trump order, Biden sent a statement. Let me be clear, I made the decisions during my presidency, Biden said. I made the decisions about the pardons, executive orders, legislation, and proclamations. Any suggestion that I didn't is ridiculous and false. This is nothing more than a distraction by Donald Trump and congressional Republicans who are working to push disastrous legislation that would cut essential programs like Medicaid and raise costs on American families, all to pay for tax breaks for the ultra-wealthy and big corporations. That's the statement from Joe Biden. Now, I think both these guys, Trump and Biden, have shown evidence of mental lapses. I think Trump is going after Biden in a way, just as Biden has said, as a distraction. I do think it's the shiny object. Fox News Channel was on in the studio where I was on the air yesterday in Los Angeles, and I was in the studio for 4 hours. It was Biden, auto pen, man, for 4 hours, wall to wall, Biden, you know. So, and Jake Tapper is on this book tour, and the book that Jake Tapper has written, of course, has detailed all the ways in which aides covered for Biden. The Biden investigation is a way for Trump to void the pardons. I see. Leave Biden alone, says Vilma. That's interesting. The pardon voiding thing we can ask David Katz about. But what I would say is that this is nothing new. The covering for presidents and for politicians and for those who are chief executives making decisions, but who are out of it, drunk, on medicine, diminished in some way. It's been going on since the beginning of the Republic. I mean, you can go back. In my lifetime, Ronald Reagan, I'd suggest, started to lose a couple of steps. And aides covered for him. Donald Trump got COVID. He was close to buying the farm. Have you read about what happened with Donald Trump? Go back and read it. And he went out on the balcony there at the White House and faked how good he was feeling. That was a total fake. Trump. And of course, you go back to FDR, who didn't want to be seen laboring as he tried to walk. He didn't want to be seen as weak. And so with Biden, I mean, he had a lot of trouble communicating. I think he had a stutter that was reemerging in all kinds of other ways. I do think he had mental acuity challenges. I'm not giving him a pass on that at all. But I mean, the idea somehow that what are the aides supposed to do? Say, gosh, it's been a rough day. You know, the president's really having a rough time thinking clearly. No, they say, hey, he needs a nap, and let's revisit it when he gets up. I mean, and the last thing I'll say, and this is just a personal point, I've said it before on this show, I take Joe Biden on a hospital gurney with an IV in his arm before I want Donald Trump and his henchmen running this country. I mean, just look at what's happening. So that's where I stand. But just on the questions of mental acuity and the cover-up, come on, man. That's the way this whole thing, I'm not giving them a hall pass on this, but I'm suggesting it's an odd time to throw the flag.
Yeah.
It's been going on for a while. So, all right. But the investigation continues, and so, I mean, Trump is trying to make political hay of that. Smash the like button like a boss, if you would. It's how we stay relevant in YouTube,
with
I
your
think.
Iron rod.
And if you're passing through, thanks for being here. Please subscribe, and you'll get a chance to jump in on different shows. We've got brilliant minds. We're about to talk to a brilliant mind here in just a moment. And we have, I think, a good range of a conversation. It's not all Biden. It's not all Trump. It's not all politics here. We get into some other things as well. And I hope you'll be part of the community that is growing around this show. June Carbone, a brilliant professor, author, great mind on so many of the topics that we've discussed, both today and regularly, and also on the changing face of America in the workforce, the corporate workforce. We'll talk to June next. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Here she is. Do we have her or not, Albert? I don't see her.
I see her in the green room. I don't see a picture.
No picture.
June, if you could hear this, just duck out and just head right back in.
June, if you can hear us, please duck out and then duck back in. Yeah.
Oh, she heard it. She's gonna be rejoining soon.
Rejoining us shortly. It is it's a real treat to be able to speak to really smart people on this show. It's one of the great things about this show. And you know, I want to take a moment. Let me just recognize Chaplain Fred. Chaplain Fred with a shout out and a super chat. Hi, Mark and Kim. Just wondering why it is of any importance. It is total nonsense of Trump to distract us from what he continues to do. It's so disgusting. Of course, that's true. Thanks for the $20 super chat. And he is right on. I mean, Chaplain Fred, is so right. You know, we're talking about something that is history, okay? You won the election, Donald Trump. I mean, you have the wheel. So now let's talk about you. And I don't mean to just move on, but it is on some level, I think, not relevant to what extent Joe Biden, lapsed at lunch or whatever. I mean, he's spoken publicly and he was on The View and other. The guy's not some dude who can't sign his name. So I don't really understand it, except, and this is provocative, I do want to remind me, please, Kim, I want to ask David Katz, who is our legal mind joining us after the top of the next hour, the reality may be associated with those pardons that Vilma mentioned. In our chat, Vilma said, I think he wants to avoid the pardons. But he's not going to be able to successfully avoid anything, I don't think. Although, obviously, we are in a world now where the Justice Department is completely mobbed up with a Trump loyalist, Pam Bondi at the top. The Supreme Court is mostly mobbed up, not completely mobbed up. I'd say it's mobbed up in some ways, certainly in the ways they're going to take away women's reproductive freedoms and a lot of the civil rights legislation that has helped forge many of the freedoms that we have in America today. So it's mobbed up from that standpoint, but from the standpoint of voiding pardons and going back and letting Trump continue his political jihad, I don't see it necessarily. So, meanwhile, Rich says the far right, the corporate media continues to normalize their political absurdity without question. There is a quality of dignifying the far right with having to kick around these questions, like even the question of that we've just talked about, Joe Biden's mental acuity. Like the more we keep it out there, the more it becomes, you could say, a distraction, a successful distraction. So, do we have June?
June is here. I'm not sure if she has
I don't see her camera on. That's the problem. June, you need a tech person there to. It is on. Okay. Well, I just see.
Maybe we'll be able to hear her and we can put up a picture.
All right. Well, that's not optimal, but it might be acceptable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me intro her, and we will we'll talk to her for a moment. If we can't get maybe you can get a picture of her or something, Albert, and we'll speak to her briefly. If we can't get more of a
she got it. She got it.
All right, there you go. She comes to us from the University of Minnesota, and I believe June Carbone is a brilliant addition to this show. She is someone who has written a book that is, I think, really, it's met its moment, because a lot of what's happening right now is, I think, designed to, as I was suggesting before, roll back a lot of the advancements that have been made by women, by minorities in this culture and this society. Her latest book is Fair Shake, Women's Fight for a Just Economy. And it talks about this transformation in corporate America that's seen through the eyes of women. They've sued major companies for sex discrimination. Now you see how DEI is being, an anti-DEI jihadists are essentially undoing so much of what I think has made America evolve to a better place. In any case, here she is, Professor June Carbone. Hello. Glad we finally got this organized. Yeah. Wow. So these are tough times, and I mean this generally for everyone. I think this nation is going through some very tough periods right now. But also for those things you've written about and reflected on, I see it as even tougher times. I'm talking about women, minorities. I'd noted that in the intro. And I wonder if you can speak to, I think you make a provocative point in your writing, which is associated with the corporate structure in America, sort of setting the stage for what we're seeing in a broader sense in America. Maybe you can put some details on that.
Sure. And let me emphasize the thing that unites this whole picture, the corporate picture, and you've got to start with the corporate picture. That explains what we're seeing. People are unhappy. They ought to be. How do they respond? By lashing out at elites. And which elites do they attack? Those which their corporate overlords tell them to attack. But what's the story behind all of this? It's allowing the fat cats to profit by squeezing ordinary people. And I've got a whole bunch of books on this, and they fall into two parts. One is the family. The Republicans have been riding on family values, certainly 2004 election against George W. Bush, but really going back to Richard Nixon. The Republicans have owned the family debate. What's the real story behind the family debate? Well, there's this lie, a big lie. Economics cannot explain culture. The move out of marriage is led by elites, by people like me, although I've been married for 45 years, that people who embrace rights for women, etc. The other big lie is that corporate America is a meritocracy. And you unite these two things together. One of the things you see is ask the question, are people poor because the system is rigged against them or because of personal failings? Republicans are off the charts in saying because the system is rigged. White Christian evangelicals are number two major groups saying the system, it's people's individual failings. Well, part of what we did in Fair Shake was to talk about the change in corporate America. And here's the change in a nutshell. You had, back in the 50s, the days of the organization man, a system based on win-win ideas. Now, the corporation man could have been a woman. He was loyal. He cared more about the company. Bonus culture wasn't part of the thing. It was the collective that mattered. The image of the company, its prestige, Bell Labs, that long-term health. What we've done and what Elon Musk did at Doge exemplifies this. Power is personalized, not institutionalized. The institution is a vehicle for the individuals calling the shots.
You mean what Elon Musk did with himself personally? You'd use that as an example? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying what Elon Musk did at Doge is what he has done at Tesla and Twitter.
Okay, but I'm sorry. Let me just quick follow up. When you say what Elon Musk did, I mean, putting the person all of a sudden becomes more important than the organization.
Yes.
You mean? I guess I'm losing it. How did he do that at Doge?
Okay. What I mean by personalized power. This is the key to the Trump-Musk efforts in government. They don't care about institutions. Take NOAA. This is the weather forecasting service. Or take the Bureau of Labor Statistics. These are professionals. You have people who care a whole lot about process in the sense of scientific rigor, accuracy, creating information that is valuable for the people for whom they're producing. They're not motivated by greed because they're not paid in accordance with a bonus system. They care about professionalism. They care about the reputation of the institution they're working for. They care about service to the public. Those values are gone from corporate America. Elon Musk never represented. When you look at how he moves in, the single biggest thing underlying his moves as part of Doge, and the part where he and Trump agreed most, are on getting rid of the deep state. What does that mean? Well, it's the same thing Jack Welch, the legendary CEO of GE, heralded as manager of the century and drove GE to extinction. What did he do when he became CEO in 1980? First thing he does is fire 25% of the workforce in his first 2 years on the job. Now, why do you do that? The claim is always waste, abuse, bureaucracy, but it's really about power. You move in, you impose your personal stamp. And when you start off by firing a high percentage of a workforce, you're doing two things. You're making everyone insecure, and then you can see who are the people who are most valuable to you, not to the institutional mission, not to the long-term health of the company, certainly not to the effective functioning of the federal government, but to Musk's personal power. So if you look at who he hit most, they were all overwhelmingly agencies investigating him or his companies. So again, the key in our book is this idea. Power is personalized, not institutionalized. It depends on making everybody insecure. When you make everybody insecure, you pit people against each other. You dismiss the people who complain sour grapes. Those poor people out there, they're poor because it's their own fault. Of course, they're going to complain if you take away their welfare checks. And then what you do is you reorient the system to the power of the person at the top. And that means an emphasis on short-term reductionist metrics. So what does that mean?
I want to just mention something here. It's brilliant. Thank you for laying it out. Now I get it completely. Peter suggests in our chat, Jack Welch, to whom you were referring, was heralded as a hero by my professor in grad school back in 2001. I disagreed with my professor, but he didn't like that I did. It is true that Welch was viewed as like a savior for GE, remember?
Mm-hmm. So here,
I kind of see, and I'll let you speak, I see sort of Musk. There are those on the right who go, thank God for Doge. I've heard many say, boy, Doge, what he's done and reimagining government, I view it as a totally chaotic wreck that he's left behind. And as you say, there were a lot of personal grievance with regulatory agencies and those who were involved in regulatory back and forths with Trump at the time, with Musk at the time and his Musk companies. But it is true that Welch was this guy that we're holding parades for, and his book tour was part of this New York Times best-selling success.
He was hailed manager of the century, and it's important to understand what he did. Now, he comes in 1980. This is the height of stagflation. The economy is in recession. And what he does is to claim he's breaking through the bureaucracy. What does that mean? What is it that produced the results? The astonishing thing about Jack Welch is that reported earnings increased 300, 400% during his 20-year tenure. Share price increased by 4,000%. And how did he do it? Well, reported earnings beat earnings expectation almost every quarter for 20 years. And the stock market responded to earnings reports. You beat expectations. Share price goes up. Share price going up makes you rich. CEO stock options, which again were something that came into effect during Welch's tenure, they tend to be tied to share price. So, cook the books, fudge the numbers, share price goes up, the executives get big bonuses, and they walk out the door and they keep their earnings.
That's fascinating. So you're saying the expectations, because you see it a lot. It beat Wall Street expectations. It beat projections, et cetera. You're saying those can be managed effectively so as to create an uptick in stocks. That's wild.
So let's talk about Tesla. How did Elon Musk become the richest man in the world? There's a 2-week period in which, now again, let me step back a minute and say, his goal at Tesla was to break through the bureaucracy, outflank Detroit and American companies beginning to invest in EVs, and flood the market with relatively low-cost, sophisticated vehicles that were within the consumer budget of at least decently well-off people. Okay? That was his goal. His focus, his monomania, was production numbers. There was a 2-week period in which he beat production estimates and had 500,000 or so vehicles recalled because of product quality issues. The two are connected. Wall Street rewarded him. This is the point where the valuation of shares of Tesla went through the roof and made Musk the richest man in the world. Wall Street shrugged at the recalls. And these recalls, and again, the two are connected. If you have a monomania about production numbers, Welch's monomania was earnings reports, Musk's were production numbers. Then you get it by sacrificing product quality. So our book opens, written before the election, our book opens with a woman suing Musk. And I can tell you all kinds of stories about that if you want. But
he was also, there were many lawsuits associated with the treatment of his workers, I think, and even the government, I think, was involved in lawsuits with him on that.
Yes, they dismissed the race discrimination suit. I mean, one of the benefits of getting Donald Trump elected is, which Musk, by the way, in the last couple of days is bragging he accomplished personally. One of the advantages is they immediately dismissed these race discrimination suit against Tesla. Yes, he treated his workers terribly. And again, this is the mindset of Jack Welch, the mindset of Elon Musk, the mindset at Enron. The fraud at the beginning of the 20th century. And that mindset is you squeeze the workers. Workers are simply one more piece on a spreadsheet. And the more you can get them to do for the least price, the richer you get. And since your goal is short-term earnings, that's the, short-term whatever, short-term production numbers, GE short-term earnings at Walmart, wage suppression. These are the numbers that drive share price. They lead to fraudulent accounts, but they also enhance personal power and wealth.
This personal power and wealth part is such a part of, as you suggested, Elon Musk's realities that lie behind sort of the public profile, and the immense respect that he's gotten as a result of what you sort of suggested is a manufactured kind of success. I mean, he has done things, right, June? But what you're saying is he's packaged what he's done in ways that have a ruthlessness when it comes to the way he's treated workers, and a ruthlessness to them when it comes to, I'd say, a lot of other things, from environmental concern to OSHA violations, et cetera. But this personal brand, you're saying that what he's done, Musk, is being replicated and is replicated sort of in the new America. The greater good of the company, and therefore the greater good of the government, et cetera, is played out in Doge, is no longer relevant. It's really all about you.
Right. And I want to compare Jack Welch and Musk in this way, too. I mean, what Welch did fundamentally is take a manufacturing company and turn it into a not so successful investment bank. What Musk did is a genuine accomplishment, and that is to supercharge EVs, electric vehicles. He did that, and he did it by focusing on short-term production goals at the expense of almost everything else. So I do admire that accomplishment. But as a long-term recipe for the sustainability of the economy, it's terrible for workers. Invite me back and I will tell you how it undermines the family more than anything Democrats have ever done. It makes all workers insecure, not just, those in manufacturing positions, but those in executive positions as well. When Musk said, "What did you do for me last week?" that is how he judges how employees are valuable to him. Not a year ago, and not where's the company going to be in 5 years. He doesn't think in those terms.
By the way, just to interject, it's ironic, isn't it, June, that the what have you done this past week, I think, is essentially defining the relationship now that Musk has with Trump, which is, you dropped all these hundreds of millions on me, got me the presidency, but dude, you're not on board in the last week. You're giving me a hard time and static about this bill. You're really of diminishing use to me.
They're both completely transactional. And the core of our book is a large part of corporate America has become the same way. Focus on the short term, focus on what moves the stock market tomorrow, not a year from now. The future will take care of itself, and workers are pawns in a game about the competition between the oligarchs.
All right. Now, I mean, again, I would like to talk to you another time about the effect on the American family, but I would love it if you give me just a moment now about how Americans can in any way anticipate the seismic changes now in tax law, in legislation that's moving through Congress and also just through the White House, through executive order. There seems to be this sort of insecurity that you note that is rippling through so many different lives. I've talked to people who've been in this country. They're not born here. They're not native-born Americans, if I can use the phrase. They may be here on working visas, et cetera, and everybody's nervous. I mean, even people who have no reason to necessarily be nervous because they don't fall into the black-brown category or the Muslim category, or, they weren't at a Palestinian protest, whatever the thing is. And yet everybody has a palpable anxiety. I wonder if you can just speak to how all of this fits into this. I'm calling it the new America. I don't mean a new in a good way. I mean this kind of reconstituted America that Trump is serving up.
Well, I want to start with the idea. It's so central to this transactional mindset, personalized power. What did you do for me recently? Is a view that it's a zero-sum enterprise. If you're in a business competition and your competitor gains, you lose. The corporate America of the 50s saw government unions and as working together, profits were less off the charts, rewards were less individual, but they were moving in the same direction. Now there's this view, anything that is good for my competitor is bad for me. Among the reasons Elon Musk is furious is he had been using his influence with Trump to stack the deck in favor of his companies as opposed to his competitors' companies, When Trump doesn't unilaterally favor him at the expense of others, he's pretty upset. That's the zero-sum mindset. And so the new bill does this on steroids. First of all, it picks winners and losers. If you're on Trump's good side, you get benefits, but EV subsidies are being cut. Environment is to be destroyed as an act of vengeance by Trump. When you then look at the security, I mean, again, I would argue part of what makes societies better is security, the security of individuals, long-term employment, steady income. Everything in this bill undercuts security, security of healthcare, security of employment rights, the ability, the social safety net that gets you from one job to another. What the fat cats, the oligarchs have done is to make everyone insecure. The new wave of layoffs coming from AI may be more highly educated and technical people. This bill, including a 10-year moratorium on having states regulate AI when the federal government is in the hands of the people creating AI, what this bill does is to make everyone more insecure except the selected winners who get their tax cuts, who get deregulation.
How does this game out, do you think?
Well, that's the scary part. I argue, I love to look back at history. And when I read Thomas Piketty's book, Capital, which is about growing inequality in the world, he goes back and he compares the inequality of the modern era to the inequality at the turn of the 20th century. And he said, what did it take to tame the oligarchs of that era? Well, his answer, 2 world wars and the Great Depression that wiped out a high part of the accumulated wealth of the planet. Marginal tax rates were in the U.S. above 80% at least, and close to 90% during the entire period from 1940 into the 60s. It's John F. Kennedy who lowered them initially. That's a product of World War II. Unionization peaked in 1945. The high point of a relatively egalitarian social order came about because of 2 world wars and the Great Depression. My optimistic thought, if Trump discredits the brand now, maybe it will only take a depression and not world war to get to the next stage. If he doesn't, there's the risk. What World War I produced was Hitler. Again, World War I, there's a beautiful museum in Kansas City on World War I, and it describes the rise of the industrialists as leading to World War I, the search for markets, for global domination in order to fund capitalism. And what World War I produced, the horrors of World War I, was punishment of Germany, setting the stage for the rise of Hitler. World War II, when it ended, led with the rise of people who cared about things like equality, community, a New Deal on a global basis, being in power. Both Reagan and Welch, who came to power at the same time, were about dismantling a world order based on equality, community, shared prosperity, not zero-sum prosperity.
It's interesting because as you speak about these various periods historically, and we only have another minute or so, but I think about the fact that it was from the ashes of war, essentially, that so much was done, or in the shadow of war. I mean, even in the shadow of World War II, I think the ashes of World War I having given rise to Hitler, as you say, because Germany was trying to find itself again. Again, it was in such bad shape. And in World War II, prosperity, or the search for prosperity in America, led to many of these programs to which you've referred, which were inclusive, which were designed to give everyone a chance to rise up. It's odd to me then that Trump comes to power at a time of, in my judgment, manufactured crisis, because the economy on one level is working very well when he comes to power. He's talking about inflation and the immigration problem, but let's be adults about this. Yeah, it was a problem, but you can't compare it to like the ashes of World War I or even what in post-World War II. America was essentially when Trump came to power just a few months ago, a prosperous nation with needs to address issues societally, culturally, even some of those issues associated with inflation and the border. The immigration is not all about the border, it's about other things, immigration policy. But again, my point is he's manufactured this notion that America was in crisis to enable this total reboot of the country that flies in the face of so much historical evolution that have brought us to a fairly prosperous place. It's just an odd thing. As you look at this history, that fact just seems bizarre to me.
Okay, so the title of my next book is going to be The Hole in the Center of the Economy, How Donald Trump Discovered It and What the Rest of Us Knew About It. And the thesis is this. With the rise of the inequality of the manufacturing era, the focal point is the factory floor. The industrialists needed the workers needed the jobs. Unions focused on reform of the workplace, and Marx owned the critique of alienation and exploitation. Henry Ford supplied the solution. The family wage, which Ford Motor Company adopted in 1914, doubled pay, became more selective in who they hired, invested more in workers, and guaranteed a measure of job security. Unions in the post-World War II era built on that. What they wanted most was job security. What's the focal point for reform now? My argument is there's no there. The capitalists of this era make everyone insecure. Jobs are transient. The most highly educated workers gain skills that allow them to get new jobs. They prosper by trading up to a different company. But for those left behind, what's the focal point? Donald Trump has walked in and said, it's the Harvard elites. It's the immigrants. It's those brown people taking your jobs. It is them. It's all a lie. It's not a manufactured crisis. The feeling of loss of status in a more unequal and insecure world is real. What's manufactured is who the villains are and what the cause is. And by the way, the left's ability to talk about this is so pathetic.
Well, what would you then? Now I'm over time, but just what would you counsel the left in talking points when talking about it? If they're so pathetic, I mean, just give me a light in the darkness. Yeah.
So our new book, we discuss the law some, but not systematically. We have a law review article accompanying it. And the law review article says, what our book says is in this kind of winner-take-all economy, women lose. Very hard for a woman to be Elon Musk or Jack Welch. Carly Fiorina tried and was hated for her efforts. But when you look at women losing in corporate America, and we detail the stories of women filing sex discrimination, sexual harassment claims, the stories aren't about discrimination. They really aren't about women. They're about abuse of power. The best cases now have sexual harassment and whistleblower claims for two reasons. First, those come with abuse of power. Elon Musk's workplaces are rife with abuse of power, sexual harassment, violations of the law of all kinds.
But I'm sorry, but do you think the left should talk about that more? You said the left is pathetic when talking about these subjects. I was just curious about what should then the left be talking about to
I think the left needs to understand that when you talk about what's happening to women and minorities, when you're talking about the fact that Trump vilifies brown people, when you're talking about the fact that women lose in this economy, when you talk about sexual harassment is rampant, it's not that men or white men are the villains. It's that those who abuse power, who happen overwhelmingly to be white men, are the villains. But when you make abuse of power the focus, that's different from saying patriarchy is the focus. William Barber and the Poor People's Coalition exemplify this. They never talk about race, but they do talk about how poor people, how low-income people are, people without power, are being taken to the cleaners by this big, ugly bill.
I love that. I absolutely love that, and I think you're right, and it's so simple. It's absolutely simple. Can't wait for your next book. Your latest book is Fair Shake: Women's Fight for a Just Economy. But wrapped up in that book is way more than just women in corporate America and in the economy. Families and all of us affected by the economy. I mean, what's great about what you do is you build sort of the understanding of the superstructure that enables all of this. There's the cover of the book. We'll have a link to it under this video. Again, June Carbone, Fair Shake: Women and the Fight to Build a Just Economy. I know you wrote it with two other gifted minds as well, Naomi Kahn, Nancy Levitt. Congratulations to you all. Really appreciate time with you. We're going to spend time with your equally gifted husband I think hopefully it'll be a day next week. But June, always so great to talk to you. And I hope it's just the beginning. Let's keep this conversation going. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. June Carbone, everybody. Bravo. Bravo.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
Right on, everybody. Great to have everyone passing through. I know you're on your way to see some cat video on YouTube, and you just stopped here because it seemed like something that was interesting conversation. Thank you for supporting the show, for being part of things. If you haven't yet, consider smashing the like button like a boss.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Get it on, baby. Gotta get it on.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Get it going. Yeah, that was fantastic. Thank you. Jolly Ranch is right. Beth Farmer with a $20 super chat saying, just what laws have been passed by this current session of Congress? Everything seems to be happening by presidential proclamation. This is a great point Beth Farmer is making. One of the expressed and also implied aspects of a Trump presidency and of a rising autocracy. I don't mean to make everything always about a rising dictatorship, etc., but the centralization of power in the chief executive's hands is the whole idea. And so, increasingly, with Congress grinding to a halt on most things in America have to get done by the president. And the case was also with Biden. He had to sign a lot of executive orders, did sign a lot of executive orders. And Trump is signing a ton as well to undo a bunch of the Biden orders and also to instill in American life new rhythms and new aspects of everything from the environment to the legal system. Nullifidian with a $10 super chat. Thank you for joining us on the show. Nullifidian, also good stuff. And
big shout out.
Big shout out. I think Nullifidian's always early into the chat as well. Luis says the new Donald Trump appointment, Thomas Fugate, a 22-year-old former neighborhood gardener and grocery store clerk, is the new head of the Center of Prevention Programs at DHS. I didn't see that. Did that just break? Hashtag best people, says Luis. I'm sensing some sarcasm. Kim can give me more on that. But look, the big thing with the Trump appointees is loyalty and following orders. If you can follow orders, you can do well in this organization. Of course, the real calling card that you have with Donald Trump is if you've been where? On Fox News, of course. Fox News Channel is where it's where he gets a lot of his recruitment. In fact, you know, I tune in Fox News Channel now. I barely know anybody. I barely don't even. This is like a whole new fleet of people coming up because everybody I know is serving in the government. So, you know, I have to. The intern in charge. This the latest to follow up on Luis's comment. Meet the 22-year-old that Trump's team picked to lead terrorism prevention. 1 year out of college and with no apparent national security expertise. Thomas Fugate is the Department of Homeland Security official tasked with overseeing the government's main hub for combating violent extremism. There he is. Oh, he's an influencer, isn't he? Don't I know this guy from Albert? Do you recognize him? He looks like an influencer I think I've seen. How about you, Kim? Do you know him?
I don't know him.
No, me neither. I can't recognize him.
I think I've seen him on some stuff. Wow. Anyway, who said, I feel safer, says Dawn. All right, I can't make him wait anymore. I want to get to a guy who, when you see him on Fox News Channel, he's just there as a pundit and in some argument with somebody on the right. He's also on News Nation. You can hear him on London radio, in New Zealand, in Australia, across the English-speaking world, one of the great legal analysts. He's here so generously on Thursdays. David Katz, everybody. Former federal prosecutor. Now he works the defense side of the table.
Great to be with you, Mark.
Yeah, really good, David Katz. And it's hard to know. SCOTUS has been busy, haven't they? There seems to be an increase in pace of their decisions. I wonder if you can.
Mark, they have to end. They have to end by the end of June, and so this is getting near the end of this term. They don't sit in the summer, so they wrap up everything by July 4th at the latest. So yes, we're going to see a flurry of opinions more and more these coming weeks.
So I want to get to some of the high-profile trials that we're looking at, the Diddy trial, et cetera. But I really, because when we speak with you, we have a chance to kind of talk about some of this stuff. But I wonder if you can speak just on the SCOTUS matters and give me a sense of how you prioritize these things. What things are coming out of SCOTUS that concern you?
Well, I think that the two decisions that they issued, I think today, actually make a lot of sense. Of course, they were both unanimous. So I don't get any Katz-Adamus points for predicting those two outcomes, but they're still interesting cases. You could say that one follows in the, follows sort of closely behind the affirmative action decision, which of course was very controversial, so-called ending affirmative action, that decision. Well, there's a case that I think her name is Ash. I think I have that right. And she says that she was discriminated against because she's straight. The Civil Rights Act, Mark, were landmark. They were huge. They changed so many things in this country, and in my opinion, so much for the better. But, the idea of affirmative action laws and also the idea of the anti-discrimination laws was that there was a majority. The majority was white, that there was a black minority, that by Jim Crow laws, housing discrimination and other things, their opportunities were held back greatly. And so the civil rights laws were going to address that by getting rid of Jim Crow, by saying, that everybody is basically equal and has to be treated equally, and no more segregated, separate but equal, no more trains that were a colored car and a white car, no more water fountains that were for white and black people. And then, of course, in the Civil Rights Act, it got extended to women, and that was very controversial, actually, at the time. But then women were included, so that there were these majorities, certainly a white majority, and there were, men women had to be treated better, blacks had to be treated better. Well, now you get into the situation as, is that necessary? Is that all that the Civil Rights Act was about? And so someone says, well, wait a second, how about if a minority discriminates against you and you're a majority? How about, in her case, how about if a gay person is selected and her argument is that she was discriminated against as a straight person? Well, straight people are the majority. One way of looking at straight people is that they're like the white people in the 1964 Civil Rights Act. So where does that really stand? And there was a decision by the Court of Appeals, Mark, after she went to court, that said that, you have to show from the background circumstances that this is the unusual case of a minority that's discriminating against a majority. So the Supreme Court just 9-0. Well, first they took that case, which meant that they were definitely going to reverse it. And they were going to say that there actually was no such standard that for someone like her. But this would also be for a person who says they're white and says that there was this coterie of black people being favored, or there were black decision makers who were discriminating against me because I'm white. Again, the majority. How it comes out with women and men is really interesting because women are a majority, but they certainly in the original Civil Rights Act were being treated as a disfavored minority, someone whose rights were being violated by the male power structure. So to bring us back to this case, the U.S. Supreme Court said 9-0 that there is no such standard, that the Civil Rights Act say any individual who's being discriminated against. And so she was an individual who could be allowed to show that she was discriminated against. One other interesting twist in her case is that when she was in the trial court where she lost in the let me get that right. No, she actually won in the trial court. She won in the trial court, and then that was reversed by the Court of Appeals. And then that was in turn reversed by the U.S. Supreme Court that said there is no such standard and that any individual can show that that individual has been discriminated against as long as they can present enough evidence. But yes, there she is. In her case, she said originally in her pleadings that it was two straight people who discriminated against her as a straight person, that they wanted a gay person to be supervised above her. And then when she didn't get the job to be the supervisor, but the gay person did, then they also tried to demote her to a job. And she said the demotion was also because she was a straight person. And she was allowed to go forward with her suit on that basis. Later on, I think she tried to amend her complaint or say that actually one of the decision makers was gay. So that was kind of an interesting issue in the case. Do you have to say that a gay person discriminated against you because you were straight? I think that's all out the window. I think as long as you have evidence to show that you were discriminated against, and of course, this case is going to have reach, especially in view of the affirmative action decision. This will open the door quite clearly, I think now, to anyone who says, a friend of mine claimed that when he went out to Hawaii, he had a lot of trouble being discriminated against by the Hawaiian, the Hawaiian people, that they treated him as an outsider and discriminated against him as an outsider. No idea whether that's true or not, but certainly that kind of a claim, whether you view them as a majority or minority, maybe a majority in Hawaii or a majority on that island, there's certainly not a majority in the United States, right? So I think it basically says if you feel that you were discriminated against because you were not, a Hawaiian ancestry in Hawaii, again, you have to get yourself in under the civil rights laws. But the basis of the discrimination mark, I think, can be anything as long as you have the evidence and you show that. So this is going to be, someone says so there was affirmative action. And of course, that's become very controversial with Trump, but they say, hey, there was affirmative action in this place. This also gets us into the whole DEI spiral that I'll try to stay out of in this discussion. But they say, look, there was affirmative action. And this particular group, they talked about this in the case. Detroit is largely black. Michigan is largely white. The United States is largely white. If you start to say majority, minority, what group are you talking about? I think now, Mark, it doesn't matter what group that you're talking about. I think all that's out the window. You simply say, I didn't get this job and I have some evidence. Now, of course, that's very difficult to find that evidence, to find a memo that says, hey, let's have a gay person in this job.
Sure, but maybe, and Beth is saying this, maybe the gay person was better qualified, but the reality was the plaintiff in this case, she had been with the corrections institution for 10 years, and the person they hired, the gay person, this is again all in these documents, was hadn't been there as long and wasn't as qualified. Again, this was her argument. She demonstrated it in court. So but I love what you've said, because you've sort of said, hey, the framework of who the majority is or what the majority is and what the minority is, that's going to change from venue to venue, state to state, place to place. And wow, it's now, and I also love that you point this out, in this new anti-DEI world that the Trump people have created, there's going to sort of be a blowback at anything that can be perceived to be. And that people are maybe going to find themselves with a foothold legally to suggest, hey, as an anti-DEI thing, I want to bring this. I was the victim of DEI. I didn't get this job because of the fact that they wanted somebody who more represented a DEI hire.
Well, Mark, there certainly will be more lawsuits, including in federal court, by people saying, I'm a man who was discriminated against because I'm a man. I'm straight. I was discriminated against because I was straight. there will be more lawsuits like that. I'm an Anglo who was discriminated against because they had a pro-Hispanic bias. Now, of course, as you say, the evidence in the case is still what's really important. And the evidence in the case does seem, from what we've seen so far, to point in her favor. I think there was someone who had either not completed college or just completed college who was hired over her, a less experienced person. And it was, 2 out of 2.
Yeah, she didn't have it. That's exactly right. The gay person had been in the department for a shorter time, and unlike Ms. Ames, lacked a college degree. Just reading the summary here, yeah.
So I think that's a big. I think that will be a big part of it. I think it will have an impact on those kind of cases. And so the other. Do you want to talk about the other U.S. Supreme Court?
Yeah, I think it's huge. There are a couple of huge ones. Please go ahead.
So the other one had to do with guns. This is a fascinating case. Mexico actually sued, and people may be surprised, can foreign governments sue? But there's certain laws that give certain people a right to sue. There's a lot of standing, actually, if you claim that you're harmed. Some people try to use our courts, foreign countries, that try to use our courts. They also try to use the British courts, by the way, because in the United Kingdom, there are more ample libel laws. It's easier to prove libel. So people try to shop their cases to the UK courts, and people, it's been said, try to shop their cases to our courts because there are some expansive views of standing and jurisdiction. So to put that, that may be the first thing people may be shocked. Mexico, what Mexican company? No, Mexico. The government of Mexico filed this lawsuit that said that their country and their citizens are being harmed by the fact that the American gun manufacturers encourage, this is their argument, encourage, aid, and abet the shipment of guns into Mexico because they produce so many AKs, AR, I forget which one it is right now, the one that fires almost like a machine gun. They produce so many of those, and they also have Spanish language slogans on them, on some of them. And so that whole combination of conduct, how many they produce, the fact that they know that they go to Mexico, the fact that they keep manufacturing so many of them, the Spanish slogans, all of that is enough to show that they aid and abet these crimes that take place, this mass violence that takes place down in Mexico. 9-0, again, unanimously, the U.S. Supreme Court said, no, that lawsuit cannot be pursued. One of the things is that they say that standard of aiding and abetting was not met, that even if the companies were indifferent to the fact that that's how their guns were being used, indifference is not alone. And this is important because of the tech cases. That was the same argument that's been made in the tech cases, that the tech companies aid and abet violence by the kind of content that they allowed to be published. But in that case, too, they said at worst, the tech companies are indifferent. They're not aiding and abetting it. So this followed from that principle, although it seems like a very different kind of case, that principle that if you're going to show aiding and abetting, you have to show something more than indifference. And as to the Spanish language slogans or whatever on them, I haven't actually seen them, but let's say it says dispara libre, shoot freely or something like that. Why do they put dispara libre on it? Who but a Mexican would understand it? And the Supreme Court said, no, there are so many Spanish-speaking Americans, right? So many Spanish-speaking people in America, and Viva, something like that. It's in Spanish, but I mean, you can't really say because someone says Viva or some other kind of expression. Even the one that I said, fire freely on the gun. If that's the slogan in Spanish, well, there's a lot of Spanish speakers in America, so that didn't prove the case for them. And then there was a concurring opinion in the case. That's where someone says, I agree with the outcome, but a justice says, I want to say more about the topic that's raised in this lawsuit that's gotten all the way to us. So the concurrence said, if you had more proof, that would sure help one of these cases. And if you said a specific crime, just that there's a mass crime wave in Mexico is not enough. But certain kind of shootings, let's say, that are done with an AK, be more specific. What gun are they? What are they encouraging? And if there were like a Spanish slogan, let's say it said, fire automatically, fire free, free range firing, and you tried to tie in the fact that there's a slogan on the machine gun that says fire freely, that's in Spanish, or you show something about why you're targeting it to Mexican audience. But if they had won, there would have presumably been quite a bit of damages that ultimately could have been obtained from the gun manufacturers. And everybody will remember this from the gun control debate in America, that there are all these laws passed by Congress that protect the gun manufacturers, and very, very difficult to sue the gun manufacturers. If the gun doesn't work, if it misfires, that's one thing. But if it fires just right, like loads and loads of bullets all at once, that's not a lawsuit, because that is not a design defect. If a gun operates properly, even if it's a very dangerous gun like that, but it doesn't misfire, it operates dangerously just the way it's supposed to operate dangerously, that actually was covered. That was one of the notorious Bush era laws that protected the gun manufacturers in America.
So in this case, Mexico has no case, as it turns out, in this gun violence. They can't turn to the American gun manufacturers. There was a judge ruling that I wanted to ask you about. You made me think Mexico, and you're speaking Spanish, and it made me think of the deportees, and they had legal challenges that a judge is now ruling that these legal challenges have to be facilitated by the Trump administration. They have to essentially hundreds of Venezuelans deported from the United States to El Salvador, just reading from the Reuters piece, under an 18th century wartime law, must be given the chance to challenge their detentions, and the Trump administration must facilitate the legal challenges. This is a ruling that was just handed down yesterday. So I wonder if you can speak to this. I had sort of a grim view. It'll come as no surprise to you as to what will happen with these people, and the one sort of most celebrated case, the case of Abrego Garcia. But I wonder if you can somehow figure allowing for the biases of the Trump administration, and now with this legal decision, how this is all going to shake out.
Well, I think that the administration, even Trump, is going to concede some of these points. I just don't think they have so many battles. And I know it was shock and awe, and they wanted to have all these battles at once and show that they weren't giving an inch even to the courts. But it's just a losing thing, because if you keep being intransigent and contemptuous toward the courts, the federal courts will win that battle. They will ultimately win that battle. Now, they've delayed like crazy. What these judges want to, well, the first thing is that the U.S. Supreme Court said unanimously that the Trump administration has to facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia. Remember, Abrego Garcia was deported over an order of a federal judge that he not be deported. They absolutely broke the law. They conceded that this was an administrative error. An error is an error, and they're not correcting this error. And there's made similar errors. There turns out to have been another person on the plane who's really another Abrego Garcia. There'll be other people who, while they didn't have an express judicial order, they had some kind of status in America where it was clear under the law that there had to be more process before they actually got stuck on a plane. There's also the mess over the people who got sent to South Sudan, who are not from Sudan or even from Africa. That one is also a disaster. And with the Supreme Court having said that it has to be facilitated, what these trial judges are doing, like this judge, I always mispronounce her name, in Maryland, but what she's ordered basically is discovery. Once you have some discovery, you can kind of get to the bottom of who did what and who has to be ordered to comply with what the judge wants them to do, and who can be held in contempt if they don't do that. And of course, the government has totally stonewalled. I think the lawyer who said in court that it was an administrative error has been reassigned or fired. So these lawyers go in there and they stonewall. They know they're going to be punished in their jobs if they do anything that Trump doesn't like. And so and then they finally do turn over some discovery, and it's all redacted. There are all the blackouts all over, including the names and the dates that things happened. So the judge's latest thing is that she said that they can go ahead, the plaintiffs, the people who are representing the wrongfully deported folks. The wrongfully deported folks' lawyers have been allowed to proceed with contempt in front of her. And the government has been given a week. They wanted 2 weeks, but given a week to respond to why they shouldn't be held in contempt. And I think she's going to start holding people in contempt if all she gets are redacted documents. And then as to many things, they say that these are state secrets. And Mark, this is a misuse of the state's secret privilege. When a plane took off from Texas is not a state secret when it happened weeks and weeks ago. This didn't have anything to do with Russia or Ukraine. It had to do with a flight that was going down to El Salvador, leaving an American, basically prison complex.
You're saying that that information should be readily available, is your point?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And just on that, there was a judge who handed down a ruling against Secretary of State Marco Rubio, saying that, on that Columbia University, Mahmoud Khalil, who was he was a pro-Palestinian activist. It was a weird ruling, David Katz, but this district judge in New Jersey ruled against Rubio, but also doesn't say that Khalil has to be released from this immigration detention facility in Louisiana. That's where he's been held since he was taken from New York City on March 8th. He's been down there a while. But, and I guess what I'm getting at in citing that is that these decisions seem kind of mixed, in that on the one hand, they want to underscore, it would seem, these judges at various courtrooms and in various places, the rights of all individuals to due process, but at the same time, they're permitting the continued incarceration or detention of these immigrants who have been scooped up by ICE agents and, taken to all of these different places, including in the case of Khalil, Louisiana.
Well, I wonder if the sign outside of that Louisiana prison says, this is America's hellhole prison, not El Salvador's. Because it's a very unpleasant place. I've heard accounts of horrible conditions of incarceration there. And America also, especially under Trump, now has the private prisons that make a huge profit over incarcerating people. They're back in business with the immigration detainees. I mean, one way of looking at this is that it's mass profiteering by Trump's friends in the private prison industrial complex. This private prison industrial complex is a total disgrace. And when people look at the big, beautiful bill and they see how much money in there the Republicans have earmarked for these private prison cronies of theirs, it's an absolute disgrace, these prisons. But to get back to your point, the problem is the contempt. If you're a federal judge and you're going to issue a contempt order, you got to be sure you can enforce it. Otherwise, you as the judge look like you're feckless. And so if it's you or me, Mark, we can have the ACLU and everyone in the world supporting us. If we don't do what the judge said, they're going to lock us up. Who are they going to lock up in this case? Because it's all heading toward contempt. If it were anyone but the federal government under Trump, these people would be, they say, this is a discovery dispute. This is a normal discovery dispute. It could be between, some huge merger. You can't play like this. Every lawyer in America knows you can't play like this. You get ordered to turn over some discovery. You got to turn it over or assert a privilege or do something like that. But, like their answer on the Rubio thing, their answer when it looked like the clock was really running out and people were going to be held in contempt, their answer was, Marco Rubio is now aware of the situation. That's like, when that happens to, I don't know, pick a car company. If that happened to Toyota and Toyota said, now the president of Toyota is aware of what's going on, the judge would say, I don't care. I ordered you to do X. You haven't done X. This is the day by which you have to do it. Get out your toothbrush, Mr. Lawyer. He said, well, wait a second. No one's telling me the truth at the company. Well, what do you mean no one's telling you the truth at the company? Who did you talk to? Okay. And they would grill the lawyer in court. Who did you talk to? What did you do? And nowadays, with electronic everything's in email. But that's why they're hiding behind this state secrets privilege, not to turn it over. And I think what's going to end up happening is it's some people at DHS, it's some people with this border and customs things that just went wild. I mean, Trump tells them, go wild. You're above the law. He made it very clear that he's going to pardon people. We have this immunity decision from the U.S. Supreme Court. This is just the horrible that people worried about, that you would have these completely rogue, lawless people. And Homan himself has said, who cares what the courts say? When Trump says what he says and the head of ICE says, who cares what the courts say? Then these agents feel emboldened. And if I can mention one last thing, which was a total outrage, was the one at Congressman Nadler's office, where they handcuffed this poor staffer over there for no valid reason whatsoever. I mean, this is like out of a fascist country. It really is. An opposing congressman's staff member, and they're all masked. They don't give their names. These ICE agents grabbed her, handcuffed her. Somebody, thank goodness, videotaped it. And you hear her saying, please call my boyfriend. Please call my boyfriend. This is America. Somebody goes into politics and they have a political disagreement with the administration. And next thing you know, they're 25 years old. They're working in an office in New York City, and these guys come in. It's like really like a fascist country. It's like something that you would hear happened in Hungary or Turkey or in Russia, and and handcuff them. And Congress. And let me just say one last thing: the Republicans in Congress have said nothing. I guess they figure, well, this will never happen to them because at the end of the day, Democrats don't do things like this. So when the Democrats are back in power, they won't go to Republicans' offices and hook up their staff members and take Republican staff members into handcuffs for no valid reason. I guess the Republicans think that the Democrats are just too much in respect of the law, too much into the rule of law, and we are. But it's just ridiculous to see people, to see these Republicans not standing up for a fellow member of Congress. Don't they have any respect for their office in Congress? They're the representatives of the people, and they allow these thugs in federal uniform, actually federal uniforms, but masked. They're obscured, and they don't ever say their names. I mean, their names will come out, Mark. You can't hide forever. This is not a fascist country, and their names will come out. But this thug squad with federal badges is just a total disgrace. And now they're going. This thing in New Jersey, Mark, was a disgrace at this immigration facility where they wrongly arrested first the mayor, and now they have some congresswoman under federal charges. The whole thing is just is outrageous.
Well, it's designed. The case in New Jersey, just because you mentioned it, is designed to. It's a brushback pitch. It's designed to tell them that you will not protest, you will not speak up as a public official against our policy, because they were visiting an immigrant detention center, and that's what that was designed to do. And the same was the case in the Nadler case. You're absolutely straight. I talked about it as Gestapo tactics, and people were going, come on, Gestapo over. No, that's exactly why did people fear the Gestapo? Because they would bust in and they would take innocent people. They would take people who were perceived enemies of the state or just enemies of the moment. And there was and as you said, they've gotten a get out of jail free card literally from Donald Trump. And it prompts Karen Cooper to say this in the chat: the law and courts are going to be irrelevant soon. And I hate to agree with that, David, but much of what you said, despite your optimism, which always kind of talks me off the ledge a bit, there is reason to believe, based on what you've said here in multiple conversations and even in this one, that the law is being ignored and due process is being ignored. So in a sense, what Karen is saying in the chat has already come to pass. There is an irrelevance to law and due process if the state can do what they want and suffer no real repercussions whatsoever to right that wrong.
Mark, let me talk you off the ledge again.
Okay.
Because all of this is coming out, okay? We're talking about it right now. The New York Times is talking about it. The media is talking about it. They released the video. Everyone in America can think, okay, if you're a Republican or you're an independent out there, think about this. You're interested in politics or some social cause, whatever it is. Let's say it's on the right. Let's say you want to do something about what Trump says is this rampant anti-Semitism that I don't see. But let's say that's what you're doing. You're working for some organization that's combating anti-Semitism. You're 25 years old. You've gotten out of college. You're not in martial arts or something like that. Next thing you know, a bunch of federal agents come in and handcuff you. Okay. And put you in detention and all that, scream at you, everything else that's going on. That is so wrong. They're doing it, but we're finding out about it. This is a miracle. We'll know their names. They'll eventually we'll know every one of their names. Every one of them will be brought up on civil rights charges. They'll resign in disgrace. These private prisons, let's assume that they're pocketing a lot of money at these private prisons. This one in New Jersey was a pay-for prison. These huge incarceration corporations. Let's assume that they're doing things wrong, Mark. Let's assume that amazing thing that maybe they're doing things wrong. They're pocketing a lot of money. It'll come out. They'll be sued. They'll be required to disgorge. It won't be like, oh, this will all be forgiven and forgotten. And you can see right now, you have the Trump Musk breakup and his coalition, such as it was, around the cult of personality of Trump kind of extending into Musk. Now there's this big breakup. And it looks like their big, beautiful bill is going down. And let me just say one thing, Mark, if I can. It's kind of off my usual topic. But, I have to laugh at people who think that Musk is somehow going to get the Tesla business back or something like that. Look at what Musk's point is in this thing, to the extent that there's a point that he keeps making in his tweets or his X's. What he keeps saying is that the bill costs too much. The bill costs too much. In other words, it should cut Medicaid even more. Where's the point where 11 million people are going to be cut off Medicaid? They're going to do it with smoke and mirrors, but the Republicans are about to cut 11 million people off of Medicaid after Trump ran around and said he wasn't going to cut anything or anyone off of Medicaid. But Musk is not saying, you know what, let's not have the big tax cut on the zillionaires so that we don't cut anyone off Medicaid. He wants the bill. He wants to cut more people off Medicaid and have the big giveaways to the huge corporations and the super rich. So Musk is not taking a stand that helps anybody that has any affinity for the environment or wants to buy a Tesla or anything like that. But just the fact, because it's so much about personalities, that the two of them are screaming at each other, tweeting at each other, that is very bad for this Republican cult of personality, and it may actually tube this bill. People start coming to their senses. People start coming to their senses.
Musk has put a stink on this bill, and as you say, the stink comes from the wrong place. Is to say, he thinks that they haven't cut enough, but it's stink nonetheless. And the way the media covers this stuff is all about the bromance being over. I mean, even we talk about the fact that the nature of the relationship between Trump and Musk has changed immensely. Has it changed, and has it been damaged irreparably? All this kind of thing. That's more about relationship, about politics. It's not about the X's and O's of the bill. So as you say, the X's and O's of the bill, most of the public doesn't see it. They just figure, hey, this guy Musk, who is doing all this cuts, he says that they're not cutting on this bill, and it's just going to create a big deficit. And that, as I say, puts enough of a question mark over the bill that it may, as you say, tube it. Yeah. Well,
the other thing that's great is that Trump can't resist fighting back and trying to say anything bad that he can about Musk. So they're going to just say that Musk's real reason was he didn't get the EV credit that he wanted. He wanted the taxpayers to keep giving all of this money away so that there could be a huge reduction of the price, a huge rebate on his Teslas. And Trump stood up to him, and that's what he's really upset about. And he wanted to have Starlink take over the FAA. That's why they were saying all those bad things about the FAA and everything else. I remember that one where they were all DEI hires. And of course, once he came in with his Starlink, so that was just a big front for him to try to get Starlink, that contract. And then there's another huge contract he's trying to take over from somebody, and they're going to make it look like, well, Musk just didn't get his way. He was so greedy. It was too much. Of course, no greed is too much for Trump. So that's not the real thing there. But in a way, I think it's really good, because in my own opinion, I was worried that Musk was really trying, Mark, to get in these Starlink, to get all of these things. I was worried that there wasn't going to be competitive bidding, that he was going to use his access to Trump to have worse products foisted on us. That's what I thought. That's my opinion. And I feel good that maybe the independent agencies won't be trashed so much that people will look at him. Anyone who thinks that Musk is somehow being better in their eyes, just remember what he did to U.S. aid. That was all Musk. U.S. aid, letting all of that stuff rot. There are thousands of poor kids, starving kids in the world who starved.
Hundreds of thousands.
Because the world's richest man had his vendetta against U.S. aid, and he used his vendetta against all these other people for for having the temerity to have investigated Musk's companies. Yes. And Musk companies, Mark, were investigated like everyone else was. These regulatory agencies, they investigate things. And instead of saying, that's part of doing business in America, he was lucky enough to be allowed to come here. Talk about a guy who's against immigrants. He's an immigrant himself, Musk. He was given all these advantages in America. And now he wants to do those things to U.S. aid, to our reputation, our American reputation for being the most generous people in the world who send that food to poor, starving people around the world. Why does Musk want to tarnish our reputation as Americans? And in all these other ways that he tarnished our reputation for months and months when he had power to do something. So in my book, he's kind of irredeemable.
Yeah, the personal vendetta led to all of that. He wanted to get USAID off his back. I detailed it hours after he went after USAID. We talked about it on this show. And the fact is, much of that money was appropriated. So, as David has said, those foodstuffs that would have made such a difference to famine relief worldwide, particularly on the continent of Africa, that stuff all spoiling on docks everywhere because the money for the follow-through to deliver all of that gone. It's
and Mark, can I say one
truly
last thing?
a scandal, and it's a kind of degradation of this nation and our reputation that is grotesque. Go ahead, David.
People who say there's not a dime's worth of difference between the Democrats and the Republicans, that's not true. Every Democrat in the Senate stood up to do something about these crazy executive actions, these heartless executive actions that Trump was taking one after the other. And 4 Republicans could have stopped it. 4 Republicans could have stopped every one of these things. All they had to say was that we're not going to go along with this. We're going to. They didn't even do an expression of the Senate by a majority. They couldn't get 4 Republicans to join them to say that these things were terrible. They couldn't get 4 Republicans to join them to say that tariffs were terrible. You see what's happening to the economy right now? It's starting to hit. Unemployment. The docks down here are deserted. I flew over them the other day. It's like, where are all the ships? You know, when you fly over Long Beach and you look down, it's like, where are all the ships?
We have one of the leading logistics experts in the world who's going to be on with us next week, and we're going to talk about that. And as you say, and now we've seen steel and those tariffs go up, and now the multipliers are getting higher and higher. You've got a 50% tariff on steel, on imported steel. You've essentially cut off imported steel from many of those businesses in America that use that steel. I mean, it's everything from, cans and containers that we find in our kitchen to construction projects. So I couldn't agree more. I'm so late, I couldn't get to I really wanted to get to that migrant, they call it a parole program, the one that Trump was suspending, but I think they're reinstituting it now. I saw that in Boston, a federal judge ordered Trump's administration to resume processing the applications from migrants who want work permits or lasting immigration status. They call it parole program, but it was really, he was trying to eliminate it completely. And maybe you can give me 30 seconds on that, because I thought that was pretty significant.
It's the expression of being paroled into the United States, which is, if you think of parole in the criminal context, it's you're allowed to walk around free, but under some conditions. So the immigrants are allowed to walk around free in the United States, but under many parole conditions. So parole is being used in that way. I hope that ends up being the final decision of the courts. Do we have any time for any of the criminal cases that came up? Or
I really don't. But if you want to, you can pick one. You've got Diddy, Girardi. Go for it. If you have one, real quick though, please, David.
Okay, real quick. A lot of people haven't paid attention to it because of Diddy, but Harvey Weinstein is on trial for the second time. The case is in closing arguments. He's tried to blame the victims. I'm not making this up. He actually found a lawyer who argued to a jury. It may sound crazy, but Harvey Weinstein is the victim in all of this. And you know what? It does sound crazy. I can't believe that he made that argument to a jury, but that just happened. That case is going to go to a verdict very soon. The difference in the Harvey Weinstein case round 2 as opposed to round 1 is that they're not allowed to get in what is called the prior similar acts. In other words, the accounts of other women who are not count victims. In other words, they're only allowed to bring in the testimony and the evidence about the 3 women. I expect that Harvey Weinstein will be convicted again. The last thing is Girardi. Tom Girardi has really changed people's lives. They've changed the bar conditions here in California on account of his taking money out of his trust fund and not paying the claimants properly. He's the one who, a lot of people know him for being married to, she's a Real Housewife of, I forget her name.
I think, or something,
yeah,
or Orange County, I don't know which one.
He had this sort of lifestyles of the rich and famous lifestyle as a plaintiff's lawyer.
But apart from that, the money that he stole was also in some very high-profile cases, right, David Katz?
It was 2 of the air crashes, but they were prosecuted in federal court in Detroit. That case has been dropped because the news flash is that he got 7 years in prison. He was, I think, really mentally impaired toward the end, but not mentally impaired enough that the judge didn't think that his problems could be addressed in the Bureau of Prisons. I think the Bureau of Prisons is overrated for how well they can address medical and psychological conditions, but the judge was satisfied. And of course, Girardi's is an egregious case. So even though he's, I think, 85, and I do think he does have some mental impairment, maybe, he dressed it up a little bit, but I do think he really does have mental impairment.
But
He's
he took victims' settlement money and used it personally. I mean, he was it's horrifying what he did, right? I mean,
it's horrifying. It's horrifying. I guess it's just the balance. It's just the balance. And I do think that he was, I think that having him in some other kind of facility, like he was in a facility right now, maybe with some more conditions, but he's going to die in prison. And maybe people think that's absolutely what ought to happen, that he ought to die in prison. I guess that maybe that's the criminal defense attorney and me coming out. But the news flash is that he's not being allowed to go to some mental care facility. He's going to be put in the regular prison system. And
was he in the Aaron Brockovich case? I want to say he was.
Yes, that's what got him incredibly famous, and everybody went to him. And I would just say to people, be careful of these super famous lawyers. Do your own homework and trust but verify. That's a good rule with all lawyers and all things in life. Trust but verify.
Love talking to you, David. Thank you for generously commenting on so many different legal cases. We covered quite a breadth, and I really appreciate it. Find David Katz across the English-speaking world. He is a coveted legal analyst, and you'll find him here on Thursdays. Thanks, David. Appreciate it.
It's great being with you, and we have a big month with the Supreme Court. This is a big month with the Supreme Court.
That's right. Don't call in sick. We're counting on you. Thank you. All right. So long, pal. Thank you.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, I thought I remembered that Girardi was involved in the Aaron Brockovich case, the water case.
Yeah.
But he's terrific. Well, I am up against it a little bit, the clock. We do a 2-hour show, and I'm up against the end of that time.
I blame you.
Well, it's the sands in the hourglass. I have only so much control. Mark, would you consider this puny donation, says Richard Delamater, $5. Times are hard, bro. To bequeath the rod of equity and mercy upon Zero Sum and Padre Fred. I will, but again, I'm not bequeathing the rod of equity. Maybe I'm not understanding the word bequeath. I am bestowing the rod of equity. I'm using the rod of equity and mercy on, in this case, Zero Sum and Padre. If I were bequeathing it, I'd be actually indicating that they will be getting it. I think. I don't know. I'm starting to wonder if I understand what the word bequeath means.
Google it.
Well, maybe somebody could Google it. I know my staff is way too busy to help out, but if somebody could maybe let me know. But anyway, more to your point, Richard, I didn't mean to get off on that thing. It just kind of threw me. The rod of equity and mercy should be bestowed upon Zero Sum and Padre Fred. Padre Fred and Zero Sum, let me just see with what Mr. Predicto would say, whether Mr. Predicto feels that bequeath is, I think in death, I would give them the rod of equity and mercy, I believe, but we'll get the, Mr. Predicto, will I give the rod of equity and mercy blessing to Zero Sum and Padre Fred? Please answer promptly. No?
No prompt answer.
Oh, here it is. No.
The answer is unclear. Try again.
Oh, my God. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Will I bestow the rod of equity and mercy on Zero Sum and Padre Fred? Please, Mr. Predicto.
There is no doubt.
No? Well, there you go then. I mean, the Mr. Predicto has spoken. There's no doubt. I'd like to put up the request again, if you could.
Uh-oh.
Bequeath is a ding word, says Tom, and it means to leave something in a last will and testament. That's what I thought. Yeah. It doesn't, but I will bestow. But I need the original, you don't have it?
I'm working on it.
Mm-hmm.
Zero Sum and Padre Fred is what you're looking for there.
Zero Sum and Padre Fred.
Mm-hmm.
I have to get into a little bit of a trance. So just give me a moment. Zero Sum and Padre Fred.
Mm-hmm.
Zero Sum and Padre Fred. Zero Sum and Padre Fred. You have to be in a position to receive and
receive the rod of equity and mercy.
Yes. Zero Sum and Padre Fred.
Receive the rod of equity and mercy.
Yes. And it is complete. Yes.
Okay.
Now, reviewed in the bylaws of the Rod of Equity and Mercy, you are blessed for life, and no one can take that away from you except me, everyone. I can reverse it. I can reverse it if necessary.
That's not fake. That's real.
Yeah, exactly. Aside from the fact that it is fake. Eugenio de Arnal with a $5 super chat, super sticker, I should say. Eugenio, thank you.
Really
nice.
I
do appreciate it. You're awesome. Mark, will there be an MT Show Trump Tank Parade review party next Saturday? We should. I unfortunately have to MC an autism benefit next Saturday.
Oh, wow.
But I wonder if we can do like a condensed version.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can do a meetup with highlights from the military dictator parade that Trump is planning. What better way to celebrate Flag Day than with a fascist cosplay parade in Washington? Exactly.
Yeah, we could do the commentary, tell people to turn the sound down, and we'll be the commentators on the military parade. I think that's great.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But I would like to do a meetup soon. Yeah. And I'll tell you what, I think within the next couple of weeks we will get one before the end of June. So we'll hatch it, we'll staff it, we'll get the invites out, and things will be rocking. It'll be our early summer meetup. We haven't done a meetup in, I think it's been a while. How long has it been? 6 months, maybe something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it'd be really great to get it going. That's an excellent idea, Luis. Guys, I want to stay. I'm dying to stay. And, by the way, Richard, you're right about this. I need some royal bestowing music. It's not that I need. I need some, and I will get it. I have it, actually. I know what I need, but I am going to build out the Rod of Equity and Mercy with some additional elements, is what I'll just say.
Yeah.
This commentator says, when you say bestow the rod, you're actually saying that you're giving it. What you mean to say is that you are bestowing equity and mercy. That's probably true. That's right. As long as I'm being pure about it, I'm bestowing the blessing. I'm not bestowing the actual rod. Thank you, commentator. I feel as though I can live my life now. Mark retains the power of the red card is true, and Shadow retains the power of the announce.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Johnson Show. Bye-bye.
Maybe Shadow will join our meetup for a second or two.
Yeah.
What?
Bye-bye. After Party Live continues. The doctor is in tomorrow. Please join us then. Until then, bye-bye.